because we've bought into the concept of that if I do this now, I won't have this problem later. We haven't done a good job with that in fitness. Whereas if you go for this walk now, it's going to save you the orthopedic problem later. It's going to save you that issue of some metabolic disease later. And so if we can go with the same mindset to say, if you could just do these simple habits once or twice a day, it's going to have a lasting impact, just like we brush our teeth in the hopes that our teeth won't fall out.
Let's learn how our next guest gets up, dress up, and show up on purpose. Enjoy the episode. Hello, morning enthusiasts. Welcome to the Best Morning Routine Ever podcast. I am your host, Lou Need, and today I have the honor of introducing a very special guest to the show, Eric DeGotti. Eric has spent the last 20 plus years in the fitness industry, and he's been coaching, training, he's been an instructor and pioneering the unique approach that, to client assessment, performance and enhancement, injury prevention, and he has been teaching all over the world how to do that and how to do it effectively. He actually was part of the New York best-selling book by Tim Ferriss, The 4-Hour Body. So, this man knows his stuff. And so we're going to jump in to introduce him and talk to him about his specialty. So with no further ado, Eric, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Winnie. Thank you for having me.
It is my pleasure. Go ahead and tell us about what got you started in this journey.
A couple different things. One, on the performance side, working with athletes, I always grew up playing sports, mostly baseball and football, and always loved being in and around it. And so was never gifted the best DNA to be a great athlete myself. And as they say, those who can't do teach. And so I did learn later on, the more I studied this, how much more I probably could have gotten out of myself. And that's kind of why I'm inspired to do this, especially with younger athletes and trying to get them to realize, what that potential is. I was never going to fulfill my dream probably of playing for the Yankees, but at the same time, I could have done more had I known what I know now. And so that's on the one side of things. And then on just the fitness and health journey in general, I had my own personal struggles where I had low back pain as in my early 20s. To the point where I had to sleep, actually even younger than that, where I had to sleep on the floor for months, and just being stubborn as I was, I didn't want to go to the doctor. And finally, my mom convinced me, you can't keep living like this. So I went, got to the doctor, and it was just a general practitioner. It wasn't somebody who specialized in back pain and orthopedics in any way. And he just kind of looked at me puzzled, said, well, it could be anything. I said, really? I waited in the office for all that time, and this is what I got? Could be anything? I said, that's not good enough. And so I said, you know what, I'm just going to go to the gym, and I had no idea what I was doing. I'm just going to do every machine or exercise that I know that has any relation to the back, and just happily landed on luck, and that it made my back better, and said, all right, well, I'm going to kind of stick with this. And if I'm going to invest my time in this, I want to learn more about it. And so just kind of went down a path and kept learning more, and kind of, here we are almost 25 years later, and getting to do it with a lot of very interesting people and in some really interesting places, and getting to speak with you about it. So it's been a wild journey.
Yeah, wild indeed. Isn't it interesting? If you don't work it, you lose it type of thing, that mobility, how your back was stiff and was hurting you. You had this chronic pain for years. And the minute you started working your back, you started doing exercises tailored to your back, you strengthened it, you actually healed yourself.
Yeah. And, had I known what I know now, I could have done it in probably 1/10 of the time and done it a lot more effectively. But there is an absolute truth to that. There is a huge problem that we have with musculoskeletal injuries. It's now become the number one claim in health insurance companies above heart disease and everything else, in that it's the second leading cause for people to call in sick to work is low back pain next to the common cold. And a lot of that is just because we don't move. We're bound to desks and chairs all day, and we're a species that was made to move. And it's a part of what makes us human beings. And because we don't move, then we don't move well. And because we don't move well, it changes everything from our structure to our physiology to our mental state. And so kind of tying all those things together is really what I have found is my passion, is to try to get everybody to understand the holistic aspect of it's not just going out and working out and sweating, that there's a lot more to this, and the ripple effect that it can have on your everyday life is astounding.
Yeah, astounding indeed. It's almost like longevity. You're gaining more of your days. You're gaining more of your life. And it's not just longevity at the end, but the here and now. How do you maximize your performance, right? How do you show up every day for your kids, your clients, your business, even for at the office? Because that physical fitness does, as you say, connects to your mental psyche.
Yeah.
So let's talk about a little bit about how one can maximize their performance and health, especially if they're considering the fitness industry.
Sure. So to make it really simple, I try to break it down in big buckets, and then we can always narrow down and get down into the granular stuff. But start with, I always say my big three things are number one is move. You have to move. And that doesn't have to be as confined and restrictive as most people think it is. You don't have to go to a gym and sit on a fancy machine or have a machine with blinking lights tell you how many calories you burn to have it count, right? Whether you like to dance, whether you like to walk, ride bikes, play tennis, martial arts, there's so many options for you to move. And because we've kind of really done a bad job in my industry of selling you what fitness is, that it scares a lot of people away, and people who either don't like the gym or are intimidated by the gym or just don't have the time or the know-how to handle themselves in a gym, they get scared of movement altogether. And that's really not the message that should be brought out, that we need to just move, and whatever that means. And if it means going for a walk every day, that's going to make a lasting impact that doesn't get enough credit. So the first thing is move. And then obviously within each category, we can boil it down into more defined parts of, well, what exact exercises and how long and how much and those types of things. But for now, just move, right? The second thing is fuel. And fuel is what we put into our bodies. The most obvious thing is our nutrition. And everything we eat, we literally, we become that. Every cell in our body is made of amino acids from proteins we've eaten. It's made from glycogen and glucose from carbohydrates we've eaten. It's made of fatty acids and cholesterols and hormones that are made from fats that we've eaten. So the quality of what you are is truly from what you eat. And so the higher the quality of your food, the more quality all those cells will become, and the more vibrant those cells are, the more it changes your energy, it changes all those interactions, and obviously your overall health. And then fuel is not just that. Fuel is what you put into your eyes and ears as well. And so social media, watching the news, all those things can be a huge detriment, right, to not only your physical but your psychological health. So mindful of what fuel you let in. That's the people you hang around with, the books you read, the TV you watch, how you spend your time, and what you let into your being is part of that fuel. And then the last piece is reset. And that's something we're not really good at. I'm in the New York, New Jersey area. As you can tell by my accent, we are go, go, go all the time. Actually, I saw an interesting stat that the U.S. is maybe second in the world as far as being the worst in terms of leisure time, like and having downtime. And so we don't really reset at all. And so that no pain, no gain, pedal to the metal type of thing, it doesn't work. It's not how our physiologies are meant to be. That's not how we've evolved as a species. And we need the ability to reset. And whether it's a momentary reset of being able to just take a deep breath, being able to take 10 minutes and meditate and focus or something, or it's our sleep, which is one of the most impactful things on our overall health, which ties into everything. It's one of the biggest factors in brain deterioration. Okay. If you look at Dr. Sanjay Gupta has a great book called Brain Rules, and he has 4 big factors in terms of not just overall health, but specifically to brain health as we age. And one of the biggest correlates with Alzheimer's and mental deterioration is lack of sleep. And so getting high quality sleep is extremely important. So that's all part of the reset part. So you got to move, you got to be able to fuel properly, and you have to be able to reset.
I love the fuel. You added a piece in there that I think is rare. Is you have to watch out what you're feeding your senses, what kind
Yes.
of things you're putting in there, your eyesight, what you're listening to, eating, touching, people who are around you, essentially, because they're fueling your energy as well, right? They're getting you energized or actually depleting your energy. So tell us a little bit about that aspect of that refuel piece of it, where you are the average of the 5 people you hang around.
1,000%. So one of the things in terms of my everyday, I work a lot with athletes, and I'm contracted to work with teams, and a lot of the high school teams I work with, we set some basic rules that we have in terms of our team culture. And so one of those rules is always bring energy into the room. And I say you're always doing one of 2 things. You're either adding energy to the room or you're taking energy away. And I explain and say, you get to some place and you see somebody's car there, you see somebody's at a place and like, oh, no, I don't want to deal with this person. I said, don't be that person, right? And then I said, there's other people that you walk in the room like, oh, good, so-and-so's here today. I'm excited to be here, and your energy changes. I said, so you're always either adding or taking away energy into the room. And so you want to be that person that adds energy into the room, and stay away from, and I always say, if you're taking energy out of our room, I'm taking you out of the room. I won't let one person's negative energy take down this team. So if you're going to be that negative influence, then we're just going to take you away. Right. And so I've kicked many an athlete out of a weight room or a training session because they're taking energy away from the greater whole.
Right. Yeah. And impacting it in such negative way, it's toxic almost. Yeah. And we get that. We get that energy because we're a bundle of energy. We're transferring energy all the time. And we get that in the office room, in the business room, or wherever we are, we get that aspect of it. So tell us about challenges that you encounter with people who don't quite understand the importance of fitness and how it all is intercorrelated to their well-being, to their happiness, to all of it. Like, what challenges and how do you overcome those challenges when you meet those individuals?
So I think the key to success that I found is every person that I work with, we always start with a very thorough assessment. And again, we start on a very global level, and then we work down to the more detailed level. But we start with, we're 3 sides of what I call a triad of health, which I took from a guy by the name of Dr. George Goodhart. And our 3 sides are structural, which is our muscles, our joints, our bones. That's kind of the hardware. There's the chemical, which is all the trillions of cells in our body that are changing over every second that we're sitting here talking. And then you have your mental, which is the thoughts and spirit that tie it all together. Now, I always say there's things we can control and there's things we can't. Like I wake up every day wishing I was a little bit taller at being at 5'6", and it's just not going to happen. So, but there are things that I can do to change my structure, either positively or negatively. If I sit on a couch all day, I'll pretty much have a body built for sitting on a couch, and it'll reflect that. Whereas I can also make positive changes where I can improve my mobility. I can improve my balance and control. I can improve my strength, my speed, my power. I can influence my structure by movement is my biggest influence. But when I move, I don't just affect that. When you move, it actually affects your chemistry. You're gonna release endorphins. You're gonna have all sorts of physiological changes that are gonna happen. It also can affect your mental state. So it all kind of loops together. Now, the chemical side of things, that's most influenced by, as I said earlier, your nutrition, either positively or negatively. And so same thing, that connects also in that if you eat certain things that aren't right for you, it can create inflammation. It can create issues with chronic pain syndromes and so forth that can be tied to. It can also affect your mental state, right? In terms of the things that you eat, that no one ever ate a big bag of candy and then felt so much better about themselves, right? So those things are interconnected. And then the mental is kind of like I said before, that's the people you hang around with, that's the books you read, the TV you watch, those kind of things. And so the more we can control the controllables is going to be the most important thing. And then the second thing as part of that assessment is say, well, where is your where is your weakest link? What is holding you back? What is going to be your biggest challenge? And so I actually have an assessment that I do within that triad where I break that triad into smaller subcomponents and have people rate themselves.
Mm.
And then they'll be surprised to say, wow, when I total up this thing, that as much as I want to go exercise and move, and I know that's going to be beneficial, my lowest score was my chemical side. And when I realized, wow, I really need to pay more attention to what I eat. And that's the awareness piece. That's the most important and impactful thing that I find, is making people aware of where their blind spots. And then the opposite side of that is also looking at where's your lever that you can use to start to gain some success, because success begets success. So I need you to do at least something that you could win today with.
Yeah.
So if it means today you're going to go out for, a 20-minute walk, and you're going to walk at this pace, and that's your win for today, then that's your win for today. And then what happens is that will then hopefully feed into other habits and rituals that you can make part of your day, that it becomes something that is just you. And I always say the industry that is really the only industry that has nailed that in all of health is the dental industry, right? And
Mm.
I don't think anybody's ever said, Lenny, that I just don't have enough time in my day because I spend 10 minutes in the morning and 10 minutes at night brushing and flossing. It's just way too much. It's way too time consuming. But because we've bought into the concept of that, if I do this now, I won't have this problem later. We haven't done a good job with that in fitness. Whereas if you go for this walk now, it's going to save you the orthopedic problem later. It's going to save you that issue of some metabolic disease later. And so if we can go with the same mindset to say, if you could just do these simple habits once or twice a day, it's going to have a lasting impact, just like we brush our teeth in the hopes that our teeth won't fall out.
Right. Yeah. And also habit stacking, right? Knowing that you have a time of day, you set a specific time to do it. So it's a lot easier for you to follow through on that. And I love you, but the notion of habit, because I want to talk about your habits. As a fitness coach, I'm sure yours is pretty robust, and we'd be thrilled to hear it. So tell us about how you get up, dress up, and show up.
Okay, so there's certain things that I always talk to my clients that you want to make as non-negotiables. Like, this is who I
Mhm.
am. This is what I do. This is part of my day. For me personally, as someone who's ironically always hated doing cardiovascular exercise, I was always a meathead in the weight room lifting weights, and never got into cardiovascular exercise until the last few years, and got myself a bike for my basement, and got myself something called a Morpheus band, which helps track my heart rate and program out my cardiovascular training. That's something that I do every day. And so it's basically 30 minutes at varying intensities based on my current state of readiness that day, which that Morpheus strap will tell
Mm.
me. That's kind of part of my rituals. Another thing that I have put as part of my everyday in the last few years is some type of breathing practice.
Mhm.
Wim Hof is one that I'll do quite often, especially if it's first thing in the morning, because it's an energizing breath. Anytime we exaggerate our inhales and we lessen the exhale, that's going to be more of an excitation type breathing. Whereas if I want to settle down and relax, we want to exaggerate the exhales. Well, I'll use this because I'm not really a caffeine person. So I'll use the Wim Hof breathing as kind of my morning caffeine. And I'll follow that up with he has a breath hold push-up type of routine that I do. So that's kind of, those are some of the keys that I have there as far as movement. As far as fuel, I will always kind of supplement with some sort of greens type drink. There's something called AG1 or Athletic Greens. That's a very well-made product. That's just kind of a good supplement as a fortification and an insurance policy so much on your physiological nutrition. And then the last piece in terms of reset and kind of what I let into my head is I discovered through books like The Daily Stoic.
Mhm.
Discovered some of the writings of some of the Stoic philosophers, and actually the Daily Stoic is very nicely configured in that it's just a short little passage each day. And so I'm big into audiobooks, so I try to listen to probably at least 15 to 20 books a year, and I'll listen to at least a little something each day that's
Mhm.
going to kind of get my head in that right space. So that's kind of how I kind of check my three buckets of the move and fuel and reset.
The non-negotiables. Yeah, I do love that. Gotta get the exercise in. I'm stimulating the mind, If it's audiobook or podcasting, that stuff is really what you do in the first 10 minutes, set the tone for the rest of it. So you have to be intentional about it every day and every morning. So I'm really glad that you talked about it. I want to talk about nutrition for a little bit because I think we undermine the importance of protein in our diet, because carbs are addicting, right? We're always craving them and they're the worst, they're bad for you. But let's talk about because I know you were a bodybuilder and lifting a lot of weight and had the intake of protein. Tell us about the importance of protein and how it fuels the body in a different way than carbs does.
Well, it's important because one, it's the primary building block for a lot of things within our body, not only muscle, but a lot of other tissues within our body and all our cells. And no, the recommendations that are given to us are far too low.
Yeah.
At a minimum, we should be usually having at least a gram per kilogram of body weight. And usually for my athletes who are training hard, they need almost double that. And so when I give someone, any kind of recommendations in terms of what they should look for, that's one of the first things to say is you try to make sure you hit that mark every day. You want to stay somewhere within your calories, but more importantly, make sure you hit that protein mark. Because what you're going to find is not only this stuff that you don't see that we just talked about, but you're going to find that there's a huge satiating factor, meaning that there's a huge factor to protein that helps blunt your hunger.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you have that fact, you'll tend to eat less of the junky, sugary type foods or fatty type food as you're getting enough protein in throughout. And so getting that protein is extremely helpful. Now, sometimes that's a struggle for people because it's not convenient. It doesn't have handles on it most of the time. You can't get out of the car window, and the ones that you do are really lousy versions of it.
Mm-hmm.
So it takes some time in terms of preparation. But if you can take that time, it is well worth that investment. And so there's also challenges where some people may or may not want to have meat or dairy or certain things like that. So that creates some limitations, but there's still lots of ways you can get protein in. And if it means going all the way down the line that you just can't get it from foods, there are some really high quality protein shakes that you can supplement with as well. The key in with that is making sure you're getting the right kind, and that I always explain it in the most simple way is that when you walk into your GNC or vitamin shop, there's a little section where I shop where the bag of protein's a little bit more pricey and it's maybe $35, $40 a bag. And I said, and then there's a section in the back that they sell all to the overzealous high school kids where it's a giant canister or dog food sized bag for $20. There's a reason why it's that big and it's that cheap. It's because that's the junk all left over after they made my good stuff. And so there's not really a whole lot of quality to that. So making sure quality is probably more important sometimes than actually trying to look at, everybody always looks at the calories and the grams of protein, carbs, and fat, when what they really should be going to first is the ingredient list, and understanding that the ingredient list is stacked in order in which they put it in there. So sugar is the number one ingredient. That means that's loaded with sugar. And so looking at those ingredients, and I always say if you can't pronounce what's on the label, or you need a biochemistry degree to figure out what you're eating, it's probably not good for you. So that's where you should look first, is in the quality of it. And then you can go secondarily to see, well, how many grams of, this macronutrient or that macronutrient it has.
Sound advice. I just saw my doula yesterday. My husband and I are expecting our first. And I was shocked when she said we need 80 to 100 grams of protein a day. I was like, how in the world am I going to make that happen? Just a protein shake in the morning is not going to cut it, or just the intro with 19 grams of fat. I mean, a protein, we got to incorporate yogurt, dairy, nuts, all this other things. Every meal has to have some type of protein. And I think the misconception is you can only get protein from meat.
Yeah, and yeah, every meal should have some representation of protein. And again, it's for the nutritive value, but it's also because it's going to help you not eat as much of the other stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know you got to work with Tim Ferriss on the 4-Hour Body. Tell us about how that experience was for you.
It was a very cool experience in that one of my mentors, a guy by the physical therapist by the name of Gray Cook, created something called the functional movement screen. And the FMS, as it's more commonly known, has been something that's been used by physical therapists and strength coaches and trainers worldwide for the past 20 plus years. Well, I was fortunate enough to meet Gray in the early years of FMS. I became a lead instructor for the system and got to teach it all over the world. And so when Tim was writing his book, he wanted to incorporate, he has actually 2 chapters about the FMS in the book and in movement. And so he reached out to Gray, and Gray was working with him on the book. And he said, I want to get tested. I need to get screened so I can experience this firsthand. So Gray called me up and he said, listen, I have a guy who's in town. He's actually writing a blurb for the back of his book. He said he wants to come out and get tested. Can you help him out? So he didn't tell me why he was sending to me. He just wanted to get tested. And I just assumed this is just a guy who's an author. So I'm expecting some horn-rimmed, gray beard professor, author to walk in, and this young guy in board shorts walks in. Really cool guy. I put him through the movement screen, found some things that he was kind of impressed to say, well, that we discovered about his shoulders. And, was appreciative, gave him some stuff he could do about that, and sent him on his way. And didn't really think anything of it. And then from there, I said, you know what, I'm going to go check him out. And I read his 4-Hour Work Week book, which was really interesting in terms of not just the concepts, but in terms of his backstory and life stories was fascinating. And then, fast forward maybe 6 to 8 months later, and we get a phone call. At the time I owned my own facility, and we get a phone call, and someone says, I want to set up an appointment with Eric. And at the time I wasn't taking on any new clients. And he said, this guy's just insistent. He wants to see you. And I said, fine, here's the rate. Here he comes in. The guy walks in and he's got this big, thick blue book. And he says, well, you're the guy. And I said, I guess, what does that mean? He says, page 236 or whatever page it is. And he opens up the book and I see my name in there. And Tim Ferriss mentions, I went and got a movement screen from Eric Degatti at his facility. And he never told me that. He didn't tell me he was doing the book. He just came in, wanted to get a real life firsthand experience. So I didn't find out till way after the fact when the book was out that I was even in it. But and then I found out some colleagues and friends like Joe DeFranco and other people that I knew in the training world were also mentioning it as well. And it was a very cool experience.
Such a great guy. That sounds totally like him. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. So Eric, how can we connect with you? How can we find you?
Easiest place is just to go to my website. It's Eric Degatti. It's EricDagati.com. And then on there's media where you can see, all the links to my social media, and you can follow me on there. I try to put out some sort of educational content every single day, as well as any previous podcasts I've been on, which this one will be on there, as soon as it's live. And then I also have something on the homepage because I do so much public speaking and I get a lot of questions from people. I have something called Ask Eric on there. So if you just write a question on there, it goes directly into my email. So if you have any questions about anything we talked about today or anything related to health, fitness, performance, just put it in there. It goes right to my email, and I'll do my best to get back to you right away.
Yes, and especially if it's around move, reset, fuel, and then reset, and then reset. It's been a pleasure having you on board. Thank you so much for sharing your insights today.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please comment and tell us what was your favorite part, your favorite habit that you are going to try out for yourself today. Comment below. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe. Until next time, I will see you at the top of your best morning routine ever. Stay blessed.